everybody. This is Darwin, Reina, the festival director at LHIFF Barcelona International Film Festival. We have it right behind me. And today I have a great guest. For me, it's an honor to have Charles Baker. Everybody knows you by Skinny Pete, all right? I gotta get into that. But first of all, how are you, Charles?
Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to have you. First of all, Charles, tell me, how do you get into acting, first of all? Why?
Oh, wow. Well, the short story is I was going to be a singer. I wanted to be a singer for a band or a soloist. I wanted to be a singer. And in college, I had done a lot of musical theater where I had to do some acting, but I was mostly in for the song and dance part. And I managed to get in with a band.
Wow.
That was unfortunately named Stargazer, and we had a little decent run for a little while, but I had a real problem on stage. I didn't really know how to be a front man for a band. I knew how to sing, and that was my job, was to stand there and sing. And then in between songs, I would just kind of like turn into this blank, like, "Hi, how you doing?" And was really kind of just felt out of place. And so I overheard the band having an impromptu meeting without me one day, and one of them had said, "Well, he's got a good voice, but he doesn't have any stage presence. He doesn't have any like personality." And I wasn't supposed to hear that, but I did, and I thought, well, how can I fix that? And so I started paying more attention to the acting classes that I was that I was taking in college at the time. And then I actually did a play that wasn't a musical, and I kind of fell in love with just acting at that point.
Right.
And I became a double major, a theater and music major at that point, and really started focusing on the theater part, and not just performing, but all of the behind the scenes stuff too.
Right.
And then that kind of kicked off my career. I started working as a stagehand in this business, because in Texas, where I started, there wasn't a lot of acting work, but there was a lot of crew work. And so I started as doing stagehand work, and then one of the stagehands I was working with invited me to work on a film as a grip, and I volunteered for 2 weeks with no pay, and learned how to be a grip. And then I started doing some grip work, and then that's how I met my first agent. And it took me 3 years to finally convince her to sign me on to her roster.
Wow.
And then a good while after I signed on, before I finally actually started booking roles.
Wow. Nice, huh?
Yeah.
Incredible story. Charles, tell me, how do you prepare your characters? How's your approach? I mean, let's say Skinny Pete, for example, right? How do you work when you trying to prepare a character? I mean, just for the actors are watching our festival, and the actors who come into the festival, especially from you, which you are a pro. How do you prepare the characters? Just in general, can you tell us a little bit your way of doing it?
It's really I joke often that my technique is a Bruce Lee technique.
Wow.
When I was in college, I studied Meisner, then I studied Stanislavski. I dabbled in a little bit of everything, and I took what I could learn from each of those. And like Bruce Lee, I use whatever technique is necessary to accomplish what I need to accomplish in the moment. And that the theater training, doing a lot of theater helps with that, because you have an opportunity to not just practice building a character, but holding on to a character for long periods of time in front of an audience, where you can't say, cut, and you can't break character at all for sometimes 2 hours straight while you're on stage. And you end up building kind of your own little toolkit as you go.
Right.
And you start finding ways to access the emotion or the feelings or whatever it is that you need to do your job. I loved Charlie Chaplin.
Mm-hmm.
He, one of my many role models in life, and I liked his idea of using, kind of working from the outside in. He would find the costume and get the character look right, and then he would start working on the physical traits of the character,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of that would then build into the final result. He didn't do a lot of talking, so I added, for me, I start with a lot of that. What kind of character is this? And then if I know somebody that this character reminds me of, then I do a loose interpretation of that person that I know, and I bring my experience from them with me.
Right.
If I don't know somebody, then that actually gives me an opportunity to kind of recreate a stereotype, because if I don't know what the stereotype is that I'm playing, I can kind of just become my own version of that stereotype and not have any influence on that. And sometimes that's, flying by the seat of your pants kind of performance. But again, right. I had years of practice doing that on stage, and before I even set foot in front of a camera. And so a lot of that work that we do as actors to like find our character and to build into our performance becomes almost second nature. When I read a script, I don't have to go through a checklist of ideas. Excuse me, I just had some. I don't have to go through a checklist of ideas and thoughts. I can simply just, and that's really like the kind of training you need to have. It's the kind where all of this, who am I? What am I? What's happening in this scene? What is my objective?
Mm-hmm.
All of those things, they're already fermenting in my head when I read the script, because I already know and I've done it so many times. It's not something that repetitive, doing it over and over.
Right. So, Charles, now that we're talking about how you prepare the characters, how difficult was to create Skinny Pete for you? Tell us a little bit, because everybody loves the Skinny Pete, man. I gotta tell you, my friends, everybody, you're an icon in Breaking Bad. Was it difficult for you to create a Skinny Pete? What you remember from back in the days? Tell us a little bit about that.
That was kind of a fluke instance. I went into Breaking Bad for just one episode. I was supposed to be a day player, where I have one episode, 3 or 4 lines, and then you would probably never see me again. And that was the plan. The character was called a skinny stoner, and so the work I did to prepare for him was in that mindset, thinking of people I knew who were like that. Now I had an advantage in that I had lived in New Mexico as a child. Mm-hmm. And New Mexico has a particular dialect. Albuquerque, no matter who you are, no matter what your race or nationality, if you've lived there for long enough, you end up picking up the dialect. And I knew what that was, and I knew how to do it. And so I added a little bit of that to Skinny Pete's character, because if he was if he was a street kid in Albuquerque, New Mexico, even a lily white street kid in Albuquerque, New Mexico, he would have an Albuquerque dialect, so that he wouldn't, constantly like stand out as as someone different. So I went in as a skinny stoner, right, who had a slight Albuquerque dialect, and that's really all I had. And when I went in and did my first four lines in my first episode, the director and I was playing it as if I was really, really stoned, and the director was like, "Hey, pull back on the stoned part." And he kind of crafted this character with me at the beginning. And then I was finished, and I went home and I forgot all about it. And then they called me back and said, "Hey, we'd like you to do another episode." And I was like, absolutely. And they don't give me a lot of warning. I was considered, like, I was a day player again. I was just rehired to play the same character. I wasn't a recurring guest star. And so I didn't have a lot of like a notice prior to an episode. It would usually be 3 or 4 days, maybe a week notice. They would say, "Hey, are you available next week for this episode?" Yes, I am. So they called me up 3 or 4 days before my second episode and said, "We'd like you to come back." And I kind of freaked out at the moment, because as a theater performer and this is my 5th or 6th TV show at this point, I had kind of gotten to where I finish a role, I just put it away. I don't think about that role anymore. And here they come and they're like, "No, we want you to come back." And I got the script, and for a while it says Skinny Stoner, but then I introduce myself as, "Yo, I'm Skinny Pete." And suddenly my character has a name, and more information about my character is being divulged. Like, oh, I had been to prison. I served prison time with Tuco. And so all this new information came that wasn't involved in just a, wow, laid back skinny stoner. But my biggest fear was I had created dialect for this character, and I wasn't really sure what the final product kind of was, because I hadn't seen the first episode. We just filmed it. It hadn't released yet. Right. None of it had released. And so I had to think back to my first episode. What was something that stood out to me? And it was a line that was the very end was "Oh, my pops is a contractor. Maybe he could hook you up." Somewhere along that lines. Wow. And I remembered how I said that. And it was kind of my prompt. When I went back to the next episode, they were like, "Okay, we're ready to start your scene." And as the camera's rolling, and I would to myself go, "Yo, my pop's a contractor." And it helped me just like remember how Skinny Pete's dialect, he has a particular rhythm to his speech that I tried to maintain, and it kind of became the thing. And as a musician, I guess I should have said in my process, as a musician, music is a heavy influencer on my performance. I use rhythm and cadence and pitch for every different character as part of the character building exercise, and that's the musicality. That even my physical characteristics are a lot of times have a beat to them. So for Skinny Pete, I had found a song that I really, it felt like it was Skinny Pete's song, and it's a song by Michael Franti called "Ganja Babe," which is it was just a fun, hip little song, and that kind of became in my brain Skinny Pete's theme song. And so I would put that on before I go on set, and then
Wow.
they'd say cameras rolling, and I'd take off the music and go, yo man, my pops is a contractor. And then I'd start my dialogue. And that kind of became how I maintained Skinny Pete. And then I learned, this was my first time ever being on a TV show more than once. I'd never been a recurring character on a TV show, and I'd never actually had to see what it was like to try and build the character. And so after my second episode, I started developing my character, creating a backstory for my character.
Right.
And then I would come get my script. They would call and say, hey, would you like to do another episode? I was like, yes, of course. And I would show up, and the script would, in a way, kind of negate, some of my backstory. It's like, oh, okay, well, no, I wasn't an orphan, because I live with my mom, things like that. And it would, the writers would add more, kind of a little bit more information to my character as we went. And it was because they were, for lack of a better way of saying it, they were making it up as they went also. They had a timeline for the story of Walter White, but Jesse was supposed to die in the first season. Right. Jesse Pinkman was supposed to die in my second episode. Wow. And instead of killing him, they went, hey, we're going to hang on to this kid because he's really good. And their chemistry is amazing. And so when they kept Jesse Pinkman, who was friends with Skinny Pete and Badger, it became kind of just an easy way for them to go, okay, well, here's his friends. We've already introduced these guys as his friends. And as long as they can maintain their performances to, keep up with these great actors, we'll keep them around. And so I did everything I could to make sure that I was at the top of my game when I showed up. But I learned, like in TV, building your character doesn't work quite the same way unless they've come up with your character in advance and set your character's arcs for the story and can tell you when they hire you, hey, your character is going to do this and this and this. You have a lot more you can work with. But not a lot of roles that I've done have been built like that. A lot of the roles that I get that are recurring on TV shows have started as, we'll try you out for one episode, and if we like it, we might bring you back. And so I would come back and then, yeah, we'll add you for another episode. And so I would kind of discover my arc as I went, which is, it's fun and it's scary at the same time, is you just kind of have to trust the writers to help you through it, and trust the directors to steer you the right direction if you start to veer off. And that was one of the things. We had great writers on Breaking Bad, and we had great directors, absolutely amazing cinematographers, the art department, wardrobe department, the catering department. Like if I could name all of the departments, they were all amazing. And that helps all of us do our jobs a lot easier.
Right. Wow, sounds interesting. Tell me, Charles, how do you guys, you, Aaron, Paul, Brian, how do you guys learn to each other, right? Each of you start learning from everybody, right? How is that process? That's very interesting, right? To work with such good actors like yourself and Aaron and Brian. How is that process of being learning from them? How do you approach?
For me, it's watch and learn. If I was able to stand behind the scenes and watch the performance, watch the monitors and see, the performance as it's being captured, that was a great thing. But the biggest thing was watching them between the performances, seeing how they communicated with the directors, how they communicated with each other about a scene, and where kind of where the boundaries were. Like I said, I was still pretty new at working on television when I started on Breaking Bad. And I just kind of mostly kept my head down, did what I was told, and moved on. And watching Bryan Cranston, I learned, hey, sometimes you can ask relevant questions to a director and to clarify, you know, not be like, oh, well, why am I walking over here? You know, but like, would it be okay if I did something while I was doing this? And knowing that you could trust the director to help guide you through any of those moments if you have questions, and not just, a lot of times I would just blindly just like, okay, he said to do this, so it doesn't make sense to me, but I'm going to do it. And then I would do what they told me to do. And they're like, oh God, that was, I didn't need to tell you. That's, you know, and when I could have said, hey, but it would make more sense if I did this, like I was thinking, you know, when instead of going, okay, I'll do what they said. And learning that I could do that was a huge breakthrough for me.
Right.
And then seeing how you can take the job seriously without necessarily taking yourself that seriously. And, you know, you don't have to be crying 24/7 before your moment of crying scene. You don't have to prepare for that. I've seen more than just Brian and Aaron Paul go from chatting and laughing with each other to doing a scene with full tears, and then in between doing that scene over and over again, chatting and laughing, practical joking, and breaking away from that for, you know, few moments, and just turning it on and turning it off. And I love to see that in actors. And I'm not a big fan of like tormenting yourself for long periods of time, so that you can create this scene. So yeah, that's I learned by watching. I've always learned by watching. I don't I didn't have a lot of like direct contact with people as far as like how to be a performer on television. I didn't know any performers until I started working on.
Right. So let me ask you a couple of more questions. How, this is a very silly question, but I want you to clarify because you're a great actor. I want everybody, you know, all the actors to know how important it is to learn your lines, right? That's, can you tell me a little bit about that? Because you know very well, but we have so many actors starting now that I want them to know how important it is to learn those lines, right?
Yes, it's the, as there's actually a play called The Play's the Thing. And the only reason we're even on set is because somebody wrote something on a page that somebody went, hey, I will invest millions of dollars in this. The writing is typically the best part of a script, a film. But it's ultimately it's the beginning, and it is the thing. Sometimes as actors, especially, you know, in the smaller roles, when we aren't the main character and we aren't in the whole movie, we aren't privy to information about the dialogue that we're speaking. And if there is some recall later on in the script that you didn't get to read the script, you just auditioned for this scene, we aren't passing out the script to everybody, you just auditioned for this scene, and you go around messing with the words, and they specifically need this line of dialogue to fit so that it works with, they're going to be like, hey, I'm not real fond of that. But like, for me, I'm not a writer at all. I am really bad at improvisation. I learned that working with Terrence Malick, where he would say, hey, here's the scene, here's what's happening in the scene, and let's go. And that was all. That was the only information he would give. And then I just kind of babbled, and he's like, off camera, while the cameras are still rolling and I'm staying in character, Terrence Malick's like, hey, don't say that. Just say something else. Then he started just say what I'm telling you to say. And that's how the whole movie went for me. Every time I opened my mouth, he's like, no, don't say that. And I don't blame him, because I was just horrified and was just babbling nonsense. So I know I'm not good at improvisation. I'm not a writer. I know after working with Breaking Bad writers that to be a good writer, you really should have some training and some experience. And if you have the training and the experience, then you know what you're doing. And who am I to try and mess with what they've done? But again, like I said, I came from the theater background, and a lot of the shows I did were by Samuel Beckett or Shakespeare. And when you're speaking in iambic pentameter and rhyming couplets, you have no choice but to speak exactly the words that you are told to speak. I did Waiting for Godot, and you can't improvise or revise Waiting for Godot. That's part of this contract you sign when you get the rights to do the script. And so I've always been a purist when it came to scripts. I believe that if it doesn't make sense to me the way it's written, then I need to find a way to make it make sense. And if I can't, then I can go talk to the writer or the director and say, hey, how is this supposed to be? But another actor once told me on stage, he was having a problem with his scene partner who changed the dialogue every time they did the scene. And he finally had to go, hey, dude, you don't know better. The words on the page are what matter. And if you can't make the words on the page make sense, then you aren't doing your job right. You can't just change it because you don't understand it. You need to learn what they're trying to say, understand what they're trying to say, find all the nuance you can in it, and then make it your own. And that's always been my thought. I try, like every word I said as Skinny Pete was written verbatim. Every yo, every church, every word. I didn't improvise any of those things. Neither did Matt Jones. And we didn't have to, but we had to make it sound like it was ours. And that was our main goal.
Yeah, exactly.
So, the play's the thing. The words are the main reason we're there. If we didn't have that script, none of us would be on set. And and they deserve a lot more, writers deserve a lot more respect than a lot of actors give them. And sometimes a writer will say, hey, if you want to mess around with this line and try your own thing, I'm cool with that. And that's when you can play and you can go, hey, yeah, I'll try something else. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. I go, I'll just keep what we did. But yeah, I think I think just learning the dialogue is key. If you're working on television, and if you want to work on television, the best advice I can give you is a lot of times the writer is also a producer and is sitting in the room watching your audition tape. And you may have outshined their dialogue that they wrote with your new dialogue, but how's that going to help you get a job?
That's right.
People, every bit of this business is an art form. It's a finely tuned, highly crafted art form. And a lot of people think, well, I know how to write a letter, so I'm going to start writing scripts. And like, hey, man, there's a lot more to it than that. There's a whole lot. I couldn't even explain to you how much more there is to that there is, because I'm so far behind on how to be a writer, but I know how to read a good script and I know how to make the script work. And that's my job as an actor. Right.
Well, you've been doing like 100 films. You've been working in TV series. You've been doing what, 25 years already this business, more or less, or more?
Not even. As far as on camera, I've only done about 14 years maybe.
But with the theater behind, you have
with
plenty
theater, probably 25,
right?
25 years at least.
Wow.
Yes, so I've had some practice.
You
And
got
that's,
practice. Let me ask you something, Charles, especially for our directors in the festival. What is the actor looking from the director? What is the thing that you like the most from a director? You know, that you say, wow, this director is good, is great. What is that thing that, you know, this is good for our directors to know? What is an actor looking for a director?
There's so many different directing styles, and I appreciate different ones for different reasons. I think my favorite kind of director is a director who lets the actors do what they're going to do, and then helps them fine tune that. And kind of gives, says, I see what you're doing with this scene. I think if you added this emotion, or if you added or took away this particular yelling moment and pull it back a little bit, I think you'll achieve what you're trying to accomplish better. Directors who can communicate the scene and the moment from an actor's perspective. The opposite of that, for example, is I've had a director once come to me and say, okay, so here's the scene. The camera's going to start over here, and it's going to come into you, and then it's going to pull back, and it's going to go hang and sit right over there. Okay, so what am I doing?
You're right.
And like he didn't think of like explaining to the actor what the actor should be doing. He was just going to say, here's what it's going to look like. And whatever you're doing, I see it in my head. I hope you can guess that. That doesn't work for me as well. And sometimes you just do, okay, well, then I'm just going to sit here and drink a drink. And you're like, no, you're supposed to be coughing blood. And literally I had a director tell me that, like, wow. now cough, start coughing blood. And I'm like, that's, that's not like a method thing. I'm not really prepared for that. So directors who communicate, who have acted, I think are really good. They don't have to be good actors, just I think anybody who's worn everybody's shoes has a better experience, and can better guide somebody. I did a short film by myself as a director, cinematographer, composer, wardrobe, all of the things except an actor. I didn't act in it. And I didn't do it because I wanted to win accolades as a one-man band. I wanted to see what all these jobs really had, what they all entailed. And I have a lot more respect for every single one of them after doing that than I did before. And I had a lot of respect before, but then like really having to like, oh gosh, I have to match the wardrobe to the set, and make that not clash somehow. And, finding all the different, as a producer, as a director, trying to communicate, with actors. And sometimes the actors are like, they get it in an instant. Sometimes the actors, they like, oh wow, this person may never actually get what I'm trying to explain to them. So let's just go with this. And learning all of the different little ins and outs of as many of the jobs as I could, so that I could, really to help me as an actor be better prepared to handle what's coming.
Right. It's a great answer. Tell me, Charles, what do you think is tell me a few traits that are very important for an actor to have to be able to succeed in this business? What do you think? I mean, because you made it, compared to us and to many of us. So, I mean, you have the experience, you've been there. What do you think is those traits that we should have?
Patience is a huge one. There is no such thing as instant gratification in this business. Gosh, I'm trying to figure out ways to phrase that. Understanding what professionalism is. It's not just about being paid. It's about showing up on time. It's about not slowing production down. I think of myself as an actor as if I were an employee of any other type of business. And think of my boss as the boss of any other kind of business. And what kind of people do you want to hire? You want to hire people who show up, who get along with everybody on set, whether they like them or not. They can at least be cordial and polite. People who do their job to the best of their ability every time. People who can follow direction. And people who aren't gonna, potentially cost more money. If a producer or a casting director brings an actor onto a set and that actor angers half the crew enough that half the crew who are really, really good at their jobs decide, hey, I don't want to be on this job anymore. You now have a lot of money you have to try and figure out how to, because one actor had a bad attitude. And there's all kinds of instances where just an actor's personality alone can be a determining factor in whether or not they get hired. So yeah, have patience, be a professional, and I guess be prepared to wait is the same as have patience. And persistence.
Right.
One out of every 3 actors make it in this business because the other 2 give up. If I were on my own, if I had no one, if I didn't have a wife and my 2 kids supporting me, I would have had long chunks of time where I had no income, I had no support if I didn't have them. And I would have had to go get another job and probably would have ended my career because I need to stick to this accounting job, or I need to stick to this thing. If I had taken those 6 months or sometimes a year gaps in my career as failure, I wouldn't have gotten the next job that I got if I would have given up at any of those points, because there are long gaps in my career where, sometimes 3 months, 6 months, it all seems like an eternity. And you feel like no matter how good you did in your last project, you haven't worked in a while, you start taking that personally. And that's a lot of times where an actor will give up. And it's in those times when you just have to persist and be prepared for the next opportunity, and be, so constantly just stay in it and don't give up.
Right. You're a good example because, say, Charles, I was watching you talking about when you were playing the piano in Breaking Bad. I mean, you really study that, right? You really practice. That's really hard work, right? My goodness.
Right.
I mean,
I had learned the song before a long time ago when I was in college, but I hadn't played it a lot. And I only played segments of it. When I did play it, I had kind of skipped over a hard part. And when they asked me to play it and sent me the script said that I played the whole song. It said the music starts playing over the scene prior, and then it cuts to the scene and you see me finishing the song. And so I thought that I was supposed to play the whole song. And so for I guess the month that I had, about 3 hours a day, I would sit at my piano.
Wow.
And practice that song. And I actually have, I think it's on my Instagram, there's a video of me with my baby, my youngest son,
Cool.
in a holder wrapped up against my chest as I'm practicing that song, and he's just bouncing along to it. And my whole family, like, even today, if I play it now, my now 8-year-old son, if I play it, he will start singing along with it, and like the whole family knows it very, very well.
Yeah.
And I tend to not practice it as much when everybody's home, because there's the collective like, oh, that again.
Oh my God. So I just got 2 more questions for you. It's been great, Charles. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
No problem.
Hey, I wish I'm gonna talk to my producers. Maybe we can do something for this edition to bring it to Barcelona, or maybe to the next one. We can figure out something, because we were really happy. I mean, I would love to have you in the festival for sure. We're gonna figure out something. I mean, you've been to Barcelona before?
I've been to Benidorm.
Yeah, it's in Valencia.
Yeah. And I was 13, 14 years old
Gotcha.
when I was in Benidorm. So that was quite a while ago.
So, all right.
And it's a beautiful country. I would love to. It's all, with kids and a wife, and just bought a house that I'm trying to update.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought it right before this pandemic started, and it's been a lot more challenging to get it updated than I thought it was going to be. And so it's become a chore. But yes, I love Spain. It's a beautiful country, and hopefully, I mean, it's something we really have to figure out.
Yeah, we're gonna work on that definitely, to see if it's in this edition or the next one, but somehow this one or the next one. My last question, Charles, what advice do you give to all the actors starting out right now? Young people, even also from my age, even older. What advice do you give to them about this career?
Learn as much as you can, and keep learning. Study, practice. I mean, when I say learn what you need to know, and then put it to use. Practice, and you really have to be really honest with yourself about your level of skill. And if it's not there, know that it is possible to get there. But that comes with practice, and it comes with a little bit of humility, and you have to be able to don't be hard on yourself in a say, but you have to be honest with yourself and say, hey, that's not good enough. I can do better. And then if you can't figure out how to do better, learn from somebody. No one teacher has all the answers. Learn as much as you can from as many sources as you can. And I highly recommend do theater, do community theater, do Shakespeare, do some long stints of some theater productions, and learn from those actors, and especially from the older ones who have been doing it. And watch and learn. I learned by watching sometimes commercials. I see an actor do something in a commercial, and I'm like, hey, wow, I like what he did. I'm going to try and remember that. And don't be afraid to look at yourself in the mirror and make faces, and to turn on your iPhone or your video camera and shoot yourself performing a scene, and then look at it and tell yourself and ask yourself, am I convincing? You can't look at it you have to look at it objectively, though. And just be like, do I believe me? would someone else believe me? Would this meet up to whatever director or actor that you admire? Would this meet their standards? And if it doesn't, then work on it till it does. And
Right.
keep learning and don't give up.
That's it. That's beautiful. And that's the truth, actually. Yeah, don't give up, like you say. Charles, it's been amazing, man. I have so many questions, but I know you're busy. But we will figure out, maybe do a workshop if we bring you to Barcelona, so we can give it more to the people. All right. Thanks a lot. Huh?
No problem. Thank you very much for having me. It was great talking to you.